Katy Perry.
Yeah. Now with Katy Perry, she makes the best programs, the best color, high-end color, and weird posters. As you can see this one, and when we click to the other two, you'll see huge colors. Now she also made a black light velvet poster, but her programs are expensive to make. They have high-end color, and they're way better quality than most programs. As you can see, that's the cover, and it's a glossy, like, kind of 3D. So
Almost like a hologram.
yeah, I don't know how much that one's worth, but it is a well done program.
Yeah. It's funny with the pop acts, it all depends how popular Katy Perry is. So
Right.
Taylor Swift is more popular. Katy Perry sort of comes and goes. Probably $40-50. It probably costs that at the show, so it's
Yeah.
not worth any more, really.
Okay, so we'll hit to the next ones. As you can see, the reason you get the program is it shows you the costumes and the outfits that Katy Perry wears in her show. Yeah, still her with the horse and plasmatic tour. And as you can see, bright colors as usual with her Katy Perry outfit. Now Kiss always sells well. People love them. The program are always twice the size. And there's some good pictures. This is a 96, 97, so it'd be worth more than the normal ones because it's older.
Kiss Army, they're big collectors.
Yes.
And the older the better, but they make more programs and
And there's
various other
famous
merchandise
uniforms,
than anyone else, but there's still a market for it. The figurines are quite big,
right.
but the programs are probably the top, like the early years are 200, maybe down to 50 for the more recent programs. Of course, they continue to tour, so
Right.
there's more stuff coming out all the time, but there's a big,
And Kiss Army
the
buys
toys
a lot.
almost tend to be some of the most worthwhile stuff. They go crazy for some of the figures.
And again, while you get the programs, you show their crazy outfits and fireworks that they were always famous for having fireworks at their show. So we'll now go to the next.
That's the dates. A lot of times in a tour program, they'll have one page towards the back where they put the dates of various arenas they're playing on that tour.
And it actually makes the program worth more because people want to know the dates. They go, oh yeah, that's the date I was at the concert with or in that city, right? So it does add value to the program and time frame of the program, right?
Right.
Now,
Paul Revere and the Raiders.
all right. Yeah. Now that's an early program book,
That's 60s.
and it's
Probably 66, 5, somewhere in there.
yeah. Let's see what the other
Looks to be in
pictures
nice
say.
condition.
It's-
It's obviously the last page.
yeah.
Paul Revere and the Raiders. Does it say a year on there? No, I
No,
don't see
but-
one. But it's going to be like 66.
Yeah, it's definitely an early program when they got these type of uniforms on and the basic like Beatles stage, right? Just a little bit of gear, you know? Okay. And there's a good
Well,
picture.
there it is. 1966.
Oh, yeah. You
It was $40 then. Well, it'd be more now. Probably $80 now, $90 for something like that.
And that Paul Revere's Raiders is a rare program book.
Well, they were big. I mean, there were some of those bands like Dave Clark 5, Paul Revere and the Raiders. They almost rivaled the
The
Beatles
Beatles
for a little
back
while. The
then.
Hermits. And then by about 66, the Beatles just took off. Sgt. Pepper and Yellow Submarine and ever the White Album, then they were
Made it
much
big.
bigger than any of the other bands.
Now our next band is my favorite band, Pink Floyd. And this was one of their tours. I
Is
think
it CME?
yes, and this was not with Roger Waters. This was the
No,
tour
with the- yeah.
after Roger Waters.
Division
left.
Bells, maybe?
Yeah, Division Bell. It was an awesome
It
tour.
was a great show, yeah.
And this
Queen.
is Queen, 82.
With Mr. Mercury.
Right, now if you click a couple more pictures here, you'll see how young Mercury looked. And if you watched ever a Queen show, and that picture tells you that he was a showman. He loved doing shows on stage. So when you saw Queen play, you would remember them, you know.
Their stuff is worth a lot. In the movie, it really wasn't worth near as much until the movie came out, but it made so much interest in Queen that now you probably get 100, 150 for a lot of the programs. Their ticket stubs are worth
Yeah.
200, 300. If they're from the Freddie Mercury era.
Right,
The ones
yeah.
after, not
This
so
is
much.
78, so it would still be from the Freddie Mercury
Right.
era. And I think, look at how young they look at this picture here. So those programs probably, what, $100?
More probably you get for Queen.
Yeah, all right. Now this was the Rascals. The Rascals did a reunion, and they did small theaters for this reunion. This is the visionary history of the Rascals. I did get this program book, and the best thing about this program book, if you hit the page, it's signed by the band, and they give a history of themselves. So this program book is probably worth more than the normal
It is
ones.
autographed by the band.
Yeah, by all four of the band members.
So Felix is the main guy.
Right,
So
Felix Alex.
probably $150.
Okay. So click a few more there. See what you can see.
Oh,
There's
there we are.
2013 autographed by the band.
Felix.
Limited edition of the books on that end. Okay.
That's cool.
Now this book, Savvy Brown, which is right here, and it's got the small faces. Now the small faces is Rod Stewart, as you'll see in the picture.
And Ronnie Wood.
Yeah, and Ronnie Wood. So
And the Who's drummer, Kenny Jones.
right, see we got the picture. Okay, so as you see the picture, Rod Stewart, Ronnie Wood, and Kenny, the drummer. He became the drummer for the Who, Rolling Stones, and Rod Stewart did his own thing. So this program book is really good program book because it's an early one. It's probably from the 60s.
Yeah, I think it says on it.
Yeah, I think you wrote something there.
1970.
1970, so it was just before Rod Stewart and the band broke up, but what do you think that was?
Well, he first then went out as Rod Stewart and Faces, then he just became Rod Stewart.
Stewart,
He
right.
dropped it. You know, they did do an extensive tour like that. It's probably $75 for that program, but it's just good history with the guys
Yeah.
all breaking out into other big bands.
Big bands, so it showed they were a really good band in the beginning. Okay.
This is Rod on his own, obviously.
Yeah, one of his other programs, and that's his glory days with the high heels and shoes.
He
and
tours
pictures.
about every year, so the programs don't go up a lot. There's always new stuff coming to market. Like he toured this year, he's touring next year.
Right.
Probably $40, $50, which is what they cost you at a show.
Yeah, so
I mean,
they don't go up much, but it's more pizzazz on the show. As we click more posters, pictures there. Now we're into the Rolling Stones,
It's a
81.
great tour, 81.
So let's see some pictures. See, look how young they look there. See, those are the heydays of rock and roll. And Mick
They
Jagger
took about, I think, a 4 or 5 year break after this till Steel Wheels, right?
Yeah,
That was
because
it.
they were arguing they were
Yes.
going to break up.
Right.
'Cause I remember we were talking about trying to get him to come to Most Sport, and we almost had
Right.
the deal. And Keith Richards said he didn't like
And
it.
now it's 40 years later and they're still touring. They're coming to North America in 23, they say.
This is a hot selling Rolling Stones book because of the
Very
cover
Yeah.
and some of the pictures.
And it's
in
for
the-
one show.
Oh, it was only one show?
Well, one
Tokyo.
city
Tokyo,
anyway,
yeah,
so it might have
Tokyo.
been a couple of shows there.
Right. And they were always big in Japan. And if you see the pictures inside the program, it shows the group that went to Japan with the Rolling Stones for that show. So as you can see, this is the Rush program. I have lots of Rush. Me and Glenn always saw Rush and hung out with them. They were friends of ours. And the thing about Rush is they like their fireworks and their lasers and their lights. In fact, their road manager was specialty in lasers and lights, and he made the show more pizzazz with Rush. This is their other one, 2010 Time Machine one.
Now, they've done a full set of reprints of all their programs.
Oh yeah.
And there is a way to tell if you go through them, because I went to a couple shows and I've seen these programs perfectly mint, like they're right off the press.
Right.
And yeah, the gentleman told me, he goes, no, these are all reprints. They still sell for about $15, but they're an exact replica, except maybe in the back somewhere it'll have the current year that they were made.
Reprinted
I'm
out?
going to say they were made maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where they ran the whole thing. Or maybe it was right after 40 when they did their last tour, which is what, 5 years ago now?
Right. So
And they issued all of them. So you just got to be careful when you're buying them, because the early Rush ones, they're worth 40 to 70, but if you're getting a reprint, it's only worth $15.
now we're into Santana, and the reason you can tell Santana, these are always in Santana's show. He loves those
Bongo drums.
bongo drums and that salsa and Caribbean and South American beat on that end. And I think that's not High Park, but Central Park where Santana played a show. Not exactly sure. He always had good covers and good programs in his art.
Supernatural, that's one he did with Rob Thomas.
Oh yeah, that hit song. And Rob actually toured with him to
Yes,
sing those songs.
exactly.
All right. And then we have Simon and Garfunkel. This is probably their last tour they did, although that's a younger picture of them. And yeah, Old Friends tour.
Because they hadn't toured for what, 10 or 12 years or
Yeah,
something,
they
right?
had their different things, and Simon went on to his own albums for a
Right.
while. And then enough pressure and money brought them back to do another tour.
And they really haven't done another, they do one-offs, but they don't do major tours at all
No.
anymore.
No, that was the last tour of the thing that they did. I think October 2003 was probably the last one, if I can remember.
Of a full tour it is.
Yeah, a full tour of Simon and Garfunkel. So, and there's the tour dates. Now, that program might be worth more than normal because it was the last Simon and Garfunkel tour program
Right, yeah.
of them touring together.
Probably 50 to 75 again.
This is Steely Dan, one of the rare touring bands, and they rarely make programs. I mean, they toured a few times, but looking for Steely Dan programs is hard to find. And the guy really didn't like touring that much, so Steely Dan didn't tour as much as normal because actually the guy would get stage fright. So click into the pictures more. Yeah, no.
Nope,
Yes, we didn't have
Taylor
them.
Swift.
Taylor Swift. Her books are high-end programs like Katy Perry, because Katy Perry and Taylor Swift, they have debates on their tours and who has the best setup and light shows. And although they've recently made peace, you could tell they were competition on their pizzazz of their show tours. And so she made a high-end program, really fancy, really glossy, kind of a 3D cover, and then great pictures of her show in her program.
This was a type of hologram, this particular
Yes,
image.
yeah, it shows up as a hologram, and if you see inside more pictures there, like I say, the reason you get the program is it shows you there's tour, right? So now we'll 360 tour. If you see the picture inside, that was the magnificent stage.
The thing is with you too, I know you've got that book here, but they got into corporate sponsors.
Right.
So one year, in which there was a big Canadian company at the time, it's not anymore, BlackBerry sponsored them.
Right.
Well, we went into the concert, there was programs everywhere because BlackBerry wanted to make 2 million programs. Again,
Right.
it's advertising for BlackBerry. And
Right.
there was a McCartney
Yeah,
one that
he
was
did it too.
sponsored by someone. And so when it's a big beer company or somebody sponsoring, they just make an extra 1 million copies for fun, which as a result, they're never worth anything.
Right. So it's a good one because of the size of this stage. This was a
It's
magnificent
cool, interesting
stage.
to read in that. It's
Yeah.
just there might be a version that's the BlackBerry version and maybe one isn't.
Right.
So one might be worth more than the other.
And as you can see close up, the stage just dominated the shows. And it was one of U2's better shows when they played it. Pop Mart, that was the early tour. Now when this Pop Mart tour started, that's when U2 got into the big mega stages. In fact, they hung out in Las Vegas, and set their stage up in the desert and performed it and practiced it with the big,
Arch,
circle thing.
yeah.
If you get a little bit more into the program there, I don't know, they show you the arch. No.
Well, that's back to the Who.
Now we're back into the Who here. What
That's
do you think?
that's a valuable program too.
So, $100?
Yes, $100.
Okay. Yes was always a colorful band and always had colorful program covers. As we flip into the sides of Yes, it's typical of their album covers with their
Psychedelic,
psychedelic artists, as you can see.
mushrooms, things
Yeah.
like that.
Or on different planets or
Yeah.
earthly pictures that Yes would always have. And I guess they were collector items because of the artwork in Yes.
They continue to tour constantly, and it hasn't maintained the pricing as well as some have.
Yeah, it's big.
I mean, we went to a Yes show, I guess, last year, and it wasn't as well attended as a lot of other bands are. And
Right.
I think maybe some of their music, it's like that old, rock anthems and
Right.
stuff. It hasn't aged as well as some of the other
Some of
more
the other
commercial
bands.
hits.
Okay.
There's a
and
bunch of reprints of their posters and
and
some
their
tour
passes.
shots.
These always make the programs worth more because you can see who played with them or what the stage setups were. Before we end up on programs, we're
This
just
is a
gonna show-
program you would have bought a week and a half ago.
Yeah, this is the last
I
Who
see
show.
there 2 weeks ago,
Last-
we were at the Who.
the
It's a
last-
great program, I just read through it, there's all kinds of great information. But what, it probably cost you what, $50 or $40?
No, $25.
Oh, that's not bad.
So that's not bad.
Yeah, it's a pretty good price.
And this book, this is one of the best. You had to be a VIP member to get this YouTube book.
Or
because-
buy VIP tickets.
Yes. And they would put the drums, the guitar picks
Piece
in
of drum
here.
head,
Yeah.
guitar picks,
They'd show you great pictures of their show.
and a
But
piece
they-
of the floor.
Right,
the
this
stage
is a piece
floor.
of the stage floor. But they put packages in here that give you all the past YouTube passes, right?
This you
That add to the collection. Yeah.
So you gotta be careful, because these are all virtually identical to their real tour passes. So there's gonna be a lot of people selling these out there on eBay, or if you go to music shows, which most cities there are music shows,
Right.
that it might be hard to tell. I'd have to compare this. I can't remember what the one looked like exactly, but if this is an exact reproduction, it's destroyed the value of the original one.
Right.
Now, if it, because this will never be worth a lot, because even if they only made 100,000 of these books, that still puts 100,000 of each of those passes out there. So you gotta be careful with stuff like that. There are things that are reprinted, like I said, the Rush programs.
Right.
Now you've got U2 backstage
Well, it was-
passes, and also the guitar picks. If it's one that really the guy threw out and used,
Right.
that's not usually the same one you get in the VIP. So you can actually tell and say, okay, you know, Pete Townsend used this pick, he flicked it out. So they'll have one. I know I had some drumsticks recently that were Neil Peart's, and it had a red stripe around. It was very similar to the drumsticks that you could get with a VIP package.
Right.
But this one said if you see it with the red stripe on a certain area down, that's the ones he used, which fortunately I didn't know when I bought it,
Right.
but it ended up being the right one, and we got, I think, $700 for the pair. Whereas if it's a pair that is just sold or given to VIPs, it might only be worth $50 to $100.
When you see programs this big as these ones, they were the programs of the 60s and 70s when they wanted to make big ones. Then as they got into shipping and delivering and making more programs, you could see they shrunk down in size.
Right.
Now another good way to increase your program is like this is Blue Rodeo, but you get the band to autograph. So that always increases the value. I don't know what you
Yes.
think Blue Rodeo's autographs are worth.
Well, Blue Rodeo, their items, I mean, they're the more Canadian-centric
Yeah.
band, like a lot of other countries don't follow them as much, and they're sort of soft country music. They're popular here, but it's probably only $40, $50 because the whole market,
Yeah.
the biggest market's Ontario, but
Right.
then the rest of Canada a bit, so it's nice. If that was Rolling Stones, it'd be 10 times that much.
Yes. Anyway, well, that's the end of our programs. Now we're going to shift later on to posters. Hey, Glenn.
Wolf, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I brought you a whole bunch of more rock and roll stuff to
Wow.
show you. And as I told you before, when you have over 10,000 rock and roll items, this is the place, Glory Day Collectibles, that you bring your stuff to find out what it's worth, whether it's passes, tickets, t-shirts, programs, posters, and other rock and roll memorabilia. Glenn's group, they analyze it, they tell you whether it's a real autograph, a fake autograph, a good poster, a good program, or whether they're copies.
If I'll get lucky, I'll find a joint in this pocket. No, nothing. Too bad. It's always good. You never know when you find drugs from one of the roadies.